the state government and the federal government. And it's true, and I can't think of any issue that we've worked on that's been more important, where we've worked together more closely than this one. And like so many people here today, I remember very distinctly the events of February 7th. I certainly remember the evening of February 7th when I was in Bendigo and the fires there in Long Gully and Kangaroo Flat. I made a lot of phone calls that night as I inspected the fire damage, but the most important phone call, and the longest phone call, was the discussion that I had with the Prime Minister at around midnight that night. And it was really from that, as we discussed what were then just the emerging details of the terrible tragedy of February 7th, that all of the steps which in a sense come to conclusion today were put in place. And all of the big steps that we've taken, the establishment of the authority, the joint funding arrangements with the state government and the federal government, the establishment of the Bushfire Appeal Fund, all of these things came about because of the very strong, close working relationship between our government, the federal government, the Prime Minister, and today really represents the next steps in what's been a very big and a very complex rebuilding and recovery process. And I believe that we've taken huge steps to date. The Prime Minister mentioned the stories when he was having a cup of coffee in Whittlesea. As we drove in today too, we were running a little bit early, we had a good look around the area. I was impressed in Hazeldean, in Flowerdale, just at the level of rebuilding and recovery which is occurring. And if you think just over the last few months what we've achieved through the authority, through governments working together with the Bushfire Appeal Fund, with local communities, I believe that we've achieved an enormous amount. And that's not to say that there's not a lot more to do. There is. That's why we're here today with this big announcement on what are the next steps. But if you think of all of the things that have been achieved, the clean-ups of the blocks, again, jointly funded between the Commonwealth and state government, more than 3,000 blocks that were cleaned up more than 2 months ahead of schedule. If you think of building approvals that have been issued, there have now been more than 1,000 building approvals that have been issued. If you think of the role of things of businesses like the insurance industry, there have been 10,000 claims that have been dealt with. There have been nearly $1 billion worth of claims. If you think of fencing on farms, there's been more than 6,000 kilometres of fencing that's already been complete. And of course, if you think of the work of the direct work of the authority, 33 community recovery groups that have been established, and the extraordinary detail and consultation and listening process that's gone on with those communities to get things right. If you think of the temporary villages that have been built in Marysville, in Kinglake, in Flowerdale, and of course the supplementary accommodation in Whittlesea. And then of course you think of the business assistance that's been provided, which has run into many tens of millions of dollars. And of course you think of the case managers. One of the things that Jenny and the Prime Minister again wanted to do very early on was to make sure that every family got support and assistance from a case manager.